You just said something important. You said you're very high on Allen. I remember we interviewed him during the pre-draft process with the Kings when you guys worked him out. Did he ever, or did you guys ever consider drafting him between those? What is it? Was it 15 and 20?
Yeah, I mean, he was. I think the group was relatively. He was a little bit polarizing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's gotten significantly better as a pro. For whatever reason, a lot of Texas bigs have gotten better once they, you know, become pros, and I think that Jared kind of, to me, showed a lot more consistency at the pro level than he did at college. I think that, we like Jared. I think we're also equally high on other bigs that year, and so. He's become quite the player, and he's really improved his game since his rookie year. So, yeah,
So
I've always been a fan. I'm a bigger
yeah,
fan now, though.
and just talking about Donovan Mitchell, just out of curiosity, going back to that 17 class, was he ever in contention for the number 10 pick before you guys traded that, or even 15 or 20? No, well, not 15, but like at 10, because I had him going 10 to you guys at that year. I was like the only one in the media that actually had him going 10.
Um, you know
Did
what,
he have a good
Donovan?
workout with you guys at least?
Donovan was the best workout I've ever seen
God damn
in
it!
my time with the Kings. It was so obvious to me, and like
I knew
I
that.
actually,
I was just.
say what you will about. I'm not a huge college resumes to me. Like that's what gets a kid in a conversation to be drafted. When a kid can come in and like perform when the pressure's on in a NBA practice facility or in a pre-draft setting in front of GMs, coaches, like I put a lot of stock into that. Like how do they carry themselves? How do they interact with coaches? Uh, how dominant are they in a workout? How do they interact with players on their team? Are they competing in these drills? Like you get a real sense of, what they're about, what their competitive level is like. And I was blown away. I continued. It's the best work I've ever seen. He came in and dominated. I know there was like, it's tough. You can, as scouts, you can sometimes, you know, analysis paralysis. You're over evaluating or you're leaning too much on either their college resume or their workout. And to me, you really have to have like a step back and have like real perspective on what just happened, who he just went against, like who he just destroyed in this workout. And like I said, I've heard the story that happened in Utah where Dennis Lindsey told his entire staff, like, if word gets out about this workout and what you guys just saw, you guys are let go tomorrow because they were trying to keep Donovan under wraps. And I think that, in college, he didn't really show a lot of his ability to score for himself. They were kind of playing him out of position. They didn't think he could play a point guard. They thought he was undersized too, like blah, blah, blah. And drafts are entirely situational. He went to a good place for him in Utah when they just traded Gordon Hayward. They were looking for a guy that could come in and handle a majority of their offense. And it worked out great for Utah. It worked great for Donovan. So I was not surprised at all. There's certain guys that have come through over the years that I've just been blown away with, and vice versa. So that was one in particular that hurts because, I was a big fan that year as well.
So what's that
But
process like? Like, do they take some of your input, some of your, your coworkers' input? Like, just kind of briefly, if you can touch on that. Was he ever in the conversation for number 10?
generally how it works is, this is why you have a scouting team. You fly your scouts in
Mm-hmm.
on, 2 weeks before the draft, and you guys are just meeting regularly throughout the day, breaking down prospect by prospect. And it's really a conversation. And ultimately, like, in an ideal situation, in most winning organizations, I think that the general manager is in charge, and the general manager is able to, you know, ultimately make the final decision. And I think that's how it should be. So that being said, you have a group that you trust, you hire, you give all of them give their input, and you really dissect guys and figure out like which guys are best for my roster. And ultimately, like the buck stops with your general manager. And so whether Donovan was in the discussion, I mean, Donovan was definitely in the discussion. I think that, certain guys had seen him more than others, and, certain people at the time of the draft have a little more clout or a little more influence than others as well. So this is just the nature of working in a front office, being in a war room. Every team is similar but different at the same time. So that's my best answer for that.
It hurts, man. It hurts till this day. We have to ask the question because this was like the most popular question about Luka and Marvin Bagley. There's obviously rumors that Bagley was a better fit. Revisionist history, even on that day. I mean, in 2 years in advance, I knew Luka was the best player in the draft. But since you think Tyrese and Fox play well together, because the biggest thing people say now is like, oh, could they have played well together? Do you think Luka and Fox would have played well together?
Good question. I don't know. Their styles are so different. I just think, I mean, obviously you just draft them and figure it out. Maybe they could. I don't know how effective De'Aaron is without the ball in his hands. Luka's clearly dominant with the ball, and he's elite. He's,
But would you say Tyrese is better with the ball in his hands as well? Because I believe he is.
Yeah, I think Tyrese he's not as ball dominant though. I think you can start on one side, have him coming off on second side action, and he's not one to just kind of hold the ball and the ball doesn't stick with Tyrese. I think it tends to stick a little bit with Luka, so it's a little different. But again, you just kind of looking back, you just figure it out. I mean, put basketball players on the court, and I mean Dallas figured it out. They had Dennis Smith, who they were high on at the time, but it very quickly became Luka's team. I'm not sure what would have happened here. I think that the one thing to take into account is that, again, we talk about drafts being situational. Mm-hmm. At the time, Coach Yeager wasn't a huge advocate for playing young players, and so would he have played and given Donovan Mitchell the same leash that Quinn Snyder did in Utah from day one? I don't know if I could raise my hand and say yes, absolutely, because then you're a team that takes Donovan in the top 10 when he was projected a little later, and he's not playing at all. And so, just as quickly as he could be, he could have this great player, but if he's not getting time or not getting the opportunity in his first year, then, things change quickly. And if Marvin gets drafted in a different situation than Sac, maybe he's having a better career. I mean, this is why drafts are so tricky and really difficult, and you have to really be intentional with your picks and have a real plan for who you're drafting. So I just went on a tangent, but
does that change though? No, that's a great point though. But does that change with stars and role players? Because I've always been under the impression that if you're a star, and to me, it doesn't matter where you go, you're gonna pretty much
your talent will shine.
Yeah, exactly. And with role players, to me, it's more situational. Like you said, maybe on this team he might be a good role player, on this team he might not. To me, Bagley was always a role player coming out of college. With Luka and with De'Aaron, in my opinion, like you said, basketball, you just have to put basketball players on the floor, and then the rest will take care of itself. Do you kind of fall under that thinking as well, or is everything situational for every single player?
I think it's definitely a combination. Talent for sure shows through, but I think there's elements of players that need to be given long leashes and time. Because if you look at Donovan Mitchell, his rookie year, it wasn't until January. He was going 6 for 25 on several occasions. He was not shooting well. And come January, they stuck with him. They continued to give him confidence. And then you just saw, that back half of his rookie year, he really took off and became a consistent scorer, more efficient. And I think that, he's a star. And it eventually shined through. But certain situations I think are different. And that's just one example. But sure, you draft a guy, and most of the time you draft Luka. I don't know, it's a little tricky though with Buddy and Garrett Temple, and I mean, Coach Yeager was very make no mistake about it. And some coaches are wired this way; they feel more comfortable playing older play. In his words, the older player will win every time, and that was you saw that with a lot of his rotations. And for a coach that wants to win on a nightly basis, some coaches. And this is where organizational direction comes in alignment with your GM and the vision. Mm-hmm. If a coach is constantly fearful of his job, then he's going to do everything he can to win that night. And sometimes a guy like, waiting for a guy like, I mean, he didn't have to wait for Luka, but waiting on a rookie doesn't always sit well with a coach that is like wanting to win as many games as possible and not really caring about the future. So,
Did you guys think Marvin Bagley was the best player at number 2?
Truthfully, I'm not one to like, act like I know it all. I did think that Marvin was the best player in that draft.
Okay.
I think that you look at that top 10, it was a big, heavy draft at the top of that draft. And so I actually had Marvin 1, Luka 2, Trey 3, Shea. I was super high on Shea 4, and then Ayton 5. And Ayton's been way better than I gave him credit for, clearly. But again, you look back and you learn. And I think at the time, I think picking Marvin at that moment in time was defensible, especially when you're looking at, how we were trying to play. And I think looking back, I mean, the idea that I was hoping we would have, and you kind of saw it in that 2018-19 season, is that we're going to play with pace and in space, and we're just going to outrun teams. Teams are going to be exhausted. And we have the fastest guard in the league. Let's get a big that can run with him and do a lot of the things that we wanted Willie to do on a consistent basis.
Right.
I thought that Marvin was a great 20 and 10, just high motor, high energy screener, roller, rim runner that could fit nicely with our core. You have surround him with shooters. I think the real issue with Marvin, one of them was just when we drafted him, I don't know if the identity was clear. I think some people
100%.
didn't think he was a center. Some people thought he was a power forward and maybe could play some small forward eventually. That's where I think and when I talk about being intentional and really having a development plan for a player and being able to project him into a certain role and then grooming him to and developing him into that role, I think is all on the organization to do. And so I don't know if I think that Marvin is a talented player. I think he has some maturing to do on his side, but I still think he's talented. I mean, the kid's averaged 14.9 and 8 rebounds, and people think he's this awful, never going to play in the league bust, and there's a human element of this all where I'm okay, let's pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Papagiannis is looking good, and Papagiannis is 23 years old still, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up back in the league when he's 26 or 27 and looks like a completely different player. What were we doing when we were 20 years old?
100%.
What did we look like? And for us to be oh, ride him off, he's done. Now, he's got to carry his weight and stay healthy and be much better and mature and grow up on and off the court. But, from a skill and talent level and ability level, I still think he's good, very good.
And then one last thing they keep asking me to ask you is, what did you guys see in Justin Jackson that year when you guys drafted him at 15?
JJ, I think, if you look back at that roster, we needed some wing depth. And so Justin, I think, kind of fit that 3-and-D type player. Won a national championship coming off that.
Why not Kuzma, though, at 15?
What did Kuzma end up going? 26,
27?
Late 20s?
Yeah.
I love Kuzma. So, I'm not making the decisions in that room. But
did he have a good workout? Was his workout better than Justin's?
They actually worked out together.
Okay.
Kuzma went straight at Justin. Kuzma, even coming off the combine, I was enamored by him. And so I really liked him that year. I think that Justin, sometimes players don't pan out, or in his case, we gave him a lot of opportunity. He was kind of going back and forth from starter, not starter. I mean, he had a wild first 2 years, and then we ended up moving him, obviously. But I think the thought was, you have a solid role piece that can come off the bench and be that defensive, wing player for you guys, but also stretch the floor for us around the Aaron, and great without the great mover without the basketball. So that, I guess that was that 20. What year was that? 2018.
The JJ was 2017.
Man, that's crazy. It's only been 2 years. Yeah. Good questions, all of these. I mean, I love obviously talking about it and having the chance to kind of reflect and,
Yeah.
hoping that the Kings can kind of turn around.